speaking of drivers, in terms of relationships where they're former bosses and teams or whatever, Kyle Busch recently had an interview done, and it was released today. That interview was released today of how things have been since this is basically his 1-year anniversary of him announcing leaving Joe Gibbs to go to RCR. And he was asked the tough question of how are things between him and JGR in terms of his old team and his relationship with Gibbs and stuff like that. And Kyle Busch said it honestly. He said, for the most part, it's kind of awkward. He said him and his car chief over at that team are basically the only ones that are close because they've known each other for so long. But he said he'll talk to them for the most part. But he said, really, it's been awkward.
Well, I can understand that. I mean, he was with them for how long. I did see that article. I did not read it. I will have to take a look at that. But yeah, I can see where it could be awkward. Absolutely. But it all depends on what kind of terms, and this applies to him, to Brad, whoever. It all depends on the kind of terms that you left on. Did you feel that your team was, or your team owner or whatever, was doing their best to try to secure your spot? Or do you feel like you were left hanging? And as far as the actual crew members go, that's got to all be predicated on how long their relationships were, whether they can still maintain a friendship or not.
I mean, I think with Kyle Busch, he said it himself. I mean, and Brad probably thinks of the same thing here with the move that Kyle Busch made. He said it feels like it's like a brand new, fresh start. Like it was a much needed, fresh start. And he said it wasn't a fresh start for. When he meant by that, it wasn't something on the personal side of things, but it was also a fresh start in terms of his career. Because who knows how long Kyle Busch would have stayed with Joe Gibbs? Who knows where his career could have led if he stayed there?
I think if Mars hadn't given up the ghost, I think Kyle would still be with JGR.
I could see that.
Because sponsorship is so important these days, and, it kind of sucks, but it is, and that's a fact. And, when Mars backed out and, then there's the whole question of, could Gibbs have tried harder to find other sponsors, blah, blah, blah. I think we've all had this conversation before. Ultimately, the decision was made, and, like I said, whether it was on good or bad terms is going to reflect on the relationships that the drivers and team members have going forward, depending on whether they were friends from way back when or not.